intro sequence start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now, on with the show.
Hi, my name is Mercedes Chandler, and happiness is love.
Awesome. Good stuff. I reached out to you to want you to get on the show. I love your content that you're putting out, and just you have this way of like really kind of going there with the truth, but just also having I don't want to say a softer side, but you bring everybody into the tent. I guess it's just like everybody just to have a conversation. Have you always been political like that and wanted to share your opinions and thoughts, or?
Yeah, so it's actually weird because I've been political or like I've held firm in certain beliefs since I was young, and I've been willing to debate and argue those beliefs since I was young. So it's something that my parents talk about a lot. They're like, "Oh, you're still doing the same thing." But I just because I think I have like this inherent desire for truth. So when I start to see things that are a little off, I want to discuss it and bring it to the table.
Yeah, and so even in your childhood, you were that way. What was childhood like for you and growing up? Did you have a happy childhood, or?
Yeah, it was amazing. I wouldn't say there was a single thing bad. I was raised on a farm, breaking horses. Huge farm. We grew a lot of our own food. I did a lot of hunting, a lot of fishing. I dressed in male clothing growing up, and that didn't raise any alarms to anyone. No one was like, "Yo, why are you dressing in male's clothing?" But it wasn't like, "Oh, you must be a boy." I just got to be me, so it was really cool.
Yeah, I think there's that. It's strange because I think that's kind of been the way for years past, but now all of a sudden we have this. It's like people judge so quickly. But growing up on a farm, I'm sure that was just the way because it was something you felt comfortable in, and you were able to get out and work in the clothing, and it was the way you were and the way you felt comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you ain't bucking hay in like sissy clothing. That's just not how that works. So yeah, and because I was willing to work, and I've always been a worker. I've always been in manual labor. Like I grew up doing manual labor just to live, and
Mm-hmm.
then have extended that. So yeah, it's just functionable clothing. Women's clothing is not functionable.
Yeah, no, that's true. And for certain jobs, yeah, I mean, you gotta.
Oh yeah.
Did you, as you got older, did that change? Did people start to look at you and have questions, or like try to judge you, or?
No, I've never received judgment from literally, okay, there's like the one-off comments online who tell me I'm going to hell or whatever, but like that doesn't bother me. It's just those are just people in the corner of the internet who are just doing whatever they're doing. Like I just don't
Mhm.
even care. I think the it's weird. The most hate that I've gotten is from LGBTQ groups who are trying to convince me that I'm trans or like tell me that I'm a closeted trans person.
Mm.
And I'm like, bruh, no, that's not what's like. I can be me. I can be biologically me and be happy about it
Mm-hmm.
and dress the way I want to. But no, I'd say because like he's my stepfather. But he's basically my father. Extremely hyper conservative. Like Baptist. I grew up in a Christian school. I left thinking that the Earth was 8,000 years old because I didn't grow up with evolutionism. I grew up with creationism. So I've only been surrounded by like I guess you would call them like hyper conservatives my whole entire life, and they they've never had a problem with how I dress. I'm just respectful. It's always yes ma'am, yes sir. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always willing to put in hard work. I know what I'm talking about with a lot of different manual labor fields. So it's just like none of them. Oh yeah, you're cool. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get any hate from them.
Do you think we're trying to push these days too much? If like a girl likes to dress in guys' clothes, or do you think people freak out and all of a sudden say, "Oh, you must be trans," or you might be a boy, or do we go too far on that right now? Does that scare you, or
Yeah,
where we're
I
going?
think 100%. I think talking I decided as a kid, for absolutely no reason other than one day, it's because of the work that I was doing, like cargo shorts, they fit better. So I owned more, I bought more. I looked at how my father dressed and my father doing different work things, and I'm like, oh, that looks really functionable. Put these clothes on. It never led anyone to ask me any questions about anything. I was just allowed to be. And that was so healthy for me because this never led into my mother asking me, hey, do you like girls? Hey, do you like boys? I was never asked either or. I was never sexualized as a kid. And the beauty of that was when I grew up, I became 18. It wasn't until like adulthood that I started to figure out my sexuality. And I did it without any pressures and I didn't feel bad about any of it. It was just, I was allowed to be me per se, which nowadays a kid starts dressing in the other clothing and we're asking them questions about their gender. And I'm like, that's confusing. That's the questions I did not get asked as a kid, and I didn't need to get asked that as a kid. And I think because I was spared from that, it's the only reason that I didn't go down the route of transition. Because, I mean, according to most people, I'm literally a trans person who just refuses to come out as such. But I'm just me.
Yeah.
Because I was allowed to be me.
So a lot of that comes from the way you were raised and your parents. I think that was it's just good
Yeah.
parenting. It lets you be who you were and figure that out as you kind of went through life.
Yeah, I was never as a female, I was never made to feel bad for participating in male activities or dressing like a male. And because of that, I didn't associate me being a female as bad or something that I had to escape from. I was allowed to be a masculine female, still maintaining female status.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I was a female and growing up, which I was and am still, say if my parents, I wanted to dress in masculine clothing and my mother was denying that and forcing me into dresses and forcing me to be hyper feminine, that probably would have induced me to run from femininity to a point where, you start to go extremes. We see, and it's almost in everything, that exists nowadays. We have a social issue. We go from one extreme to the other end of it. And it's just, now a kid who is dressing as a male, now we're just putting them into the boy category instead of understanding that masculine women and feminine men exist.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, with all that going on and growing up, do you remember the time that you either heard something in the news or I don't know, something hit you that ticked you off that made you want to get involved and give your opinion or kind of get more into politics? Was there a moment that something just really kind of upset you?
Like you saying growing up, or just like as to why I'm talking about it now?
Well, just I guess the way you're talking about it now, or did you kind of see yourself at a point where you're like, I want to get more involved. I want to kind of try to change things or at least enlighten people. Was there a moment where you kind of got involved on this journey?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I have huge motives behind what I'm doing, and I don't talk about them much on social media. But I'll talk about them here because why not? So, I actually have a whole entire plan, and it might sound a little insane, but I'm a Christian. Well, I'd prefer the name disciple of Christ, right? So we're going into a rabbit hole, and I apologize here, but Jesus took people and he changed their entire lives. How did he do that? He did not do that by standing on a street corner with a sign saying that you're going to hell. Repent of your sins. Okay, that's not what Jesus did to amass people who would go spread his word, as they did. I mean, in the face of being boiled in oil, in the face of, being beheaded, in the face of martyrism, they attained the ability and the desire to do that because the time Jesus spent with them. So I think the best way to spread Jesus's message is through teaching people and teaching them in a way that's not just on church on Sunday, but really developing a relationship with people. So my whole entire actual plan is to start a church. And this is what the entire church does. It's a church of a small group of people who spend a lot of time with each other, doing a lot of acts of service for other people here in America, feeding the homeless, helping other people, doing fundraisers in order to raise money for different people in need, really putting in works and acts of service. Now, to attain that, how do you do that without resources? You don't. So I'm like, okay, how do you fund that? Now I got a furniture business here in Austin, Texas, and my main goal is financial freedom, in which I can take like half of the profits of whatever businesses I have and put it and funnel it all into that. And that'll be my resources. So my whole point of social media and how I got into it is, originally I amassed a following because I was posting videos as a female working on vehicles. Okay. And that did really well. But I don't think it's as sustainable, and I don't think it garners, it doesn't snowball, say, like politics does. And when you're a lesbian out here spouting the truth on both sides, it'll get you pretty far. You know what I mean? So the whole entire point of social media is to funnel it into a church.
Wow, that's amazing. That's an amazing goal. But based on what I've seen from you online, I know you'll probably get there because you're really determined and you really believe in what you're saying, and you are not trying to make enemies. You're just trying to put the truth out there. You're trying to, on both sides, which is really refreshing. Because I feel like I don't know. I like to say sometimes that you have the dog tag on of like a big R or big D. You have to go into these two camps, but really everyone should really think for themselves and kind of look at both sides and try to figure out, because there are faults on both sides, I feel like. And
yes, there is. Now, it's hard though. That is the calling out both sides can get extremely hard, because it's like right now my following is, I'd say, 90% conservatives. And they don't want to be called out. So it's frustrating because I'm like, then I sit in this place, I'm like, what do I do? Because I'm looking at two different moralities. I'm looking at the morality of staying true while online and voicing both sides of the call out, but potentially losing traction. But the traction, what is the traction going towards? Something that I'd say is greater than social media, could ever be. My life online versus what I plan to do with the money I make online in real life is the greater thing. So it's like, now I wonder at the end of the day, and I look for advice on this because I want to call out both sides really bad. And I think I do okay at doing it, but I don't call out the conservatives near as much as I call out leftists. And it's out of fear of losing traction, because it's like, at the end of the day, these people are online, and how much is my videos going to change their life versus how much is my time and resource going to change real people's lives in person?
Yeah.
And which one do I sacrifice?
Right. Is there's that fear, but is there also, in your mind, do you align more with values of conservatism, or is it either one? You're just looking at straight down the middle truth, no matter which way it lies.
Yeah. I am just truth. Like, I try to look at things with a completely unbiased. I know online I present as a conservative, but I'm not actually conservative at all. Like, I don't align with either political parties, because it's just, I think there's an objective truth that we have to look through those lenses when we're identifying the issues, social issues, financial issues, issues at the border, all those issues we can look at through unbiased, truth-filled lenses. I think a lot of people take those lenses and they throw them in the trash because they only look at the lens through their party. So will their party agree with this, even if it's against their moral grounding and standing? Yeah, they might agree with it just because their party says so. And you see this on both sides, and it's equal on both sides. I wouldn't say either party contributes to the hypocrisy more than the other. They both have their spoons in it, stirring that. But but it's like, it's more out of fear to call them out, because most of my following base is conservative. So if I'm over here being like, hey, conservatives, what's this? What are we doing? The comments will be filled with, but those damn leftists, those damn Democrats. And I'm like, the accountability is lacking within humanity. It's pretty sad. Yeah,
I agree. I think, we can't, we're all caught up in like picking a team, picking a side. And I think even with the media, that's, like what news source you go to, that's what makes you feel comfortable. Like, if it's not really that you're learning something new or you want to find out new information, it's what do you agree with and what do you align with in your values and what makes you feel comfortable to watch a newscast or pick up your news media. It's just, I think there's more, we need to have more conversation. I feel like, and be able to listen more than we talk, just try to get to know someone and figure out, walk in their shoes a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you, do you feel like that the gay community as a whole do they look at conservatives like, as they don't understand the gay community? Is there a, I don't know, a division there, do you think, for?
So I think it's such a multifaceted issue, and it's like, okay. Also, I'm going to start out with an example on, say, like, we know we have crime statistics that come out that point to a certain race of people experiencing alarming amounts of crime per capita comparatively to like the other races. Okay, so African Americans, a lot of crime. Now, I've been on Twitter forums, okay, and I've been on Twitter forums where you got a bunch of, I'd say, far right extremists making jokes saying that, like, oh, what would be the benefits if we eradicated African Americans from the earth? And I'm like, are you serious? Like, bunch of comments saying, well, education would go up, education would go up, education would go up. And I look at this and it's very frustrating because I'm like, no one's taking an accountability for their parts or the part they have played. So if you look at the African American community, it was, what was it, 1954. I think that is the year that segregation ended within school systems. That's not that. I don't think people understand that that's not that long ago. So if you question why they disproportionately are uneducated, they were segregated for over 100 years. I'm talking about slavery ended 100 years ago, or I think it's 159, 100 and something years ago. But for 100 years after that, they were segregated, weren't allowed the education. So when we look at why they're uneducated, it's blatantly right in front of our face. No one wants to take accountability for that. Now, I think as a society, it's our job to recognize what happened and move forward. And continuing to push the issue over and over and over again and beat the dead horse is not moving past. We have to move past together. Now, I look at the gay community. The gay community, what? They got marriage rights back in 2012. You know what I mean? So you got a big group of angry people, and we see this. We see pendulum swinging. So it's like the black issue was, we're going to segregate them, okay? And then it swung over to, we only hire people of color, and white people, no matter their SAT scores, are told, sorry. It's like this pendulum swings. So now we have gay people who their sexuality is so oppressed, they're not allowed to show it in public. They're not allowed to have any part of marriage. They're judged. I mean, oftentimes, like, physical violence against these people, pendulum swings. And now their sexuality is being flaunted in the streets. It's like they can't tell you enough about their sexuality. So we just see this continuous pendulum swinging. And I think that that's what this division is, but no one wants to like talk about it, or no one wants to recognize what's happened here. So it's like, I feel bad for the gay community because what they're doing is unexcusable. Like, you can't excuse trying to normalize, puberty blockers and hormones for children and indoctrinating children into this ideology. You can't like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
But then that's what's being talked about. What's not being talked about is the oppression that led to the situation we're in today. And that's what I want to talk about on my channel more. Those are the type of concepts I want to talk about, but I don't think the average person has the IQ to address these issues. They don't want to. So it's like, what do you do?
Why? How do you think we got into this over sexualized part in history? I mean, it just seems like everywhere you look, that is in your face, and we can't get to know someone based on other values or qualities. It always has to be, we have to bring their sexual orientation into it. It just seems like that's just kind of an overabundance, especially with our kids now.
Yeah, it's just pendulum swinging. So this is their response to oppression. Like, and we see this in multiple groups when they rise up and they get their rights, they normally take it to a far extreme. And we're seeing that here today. And I think the best job is encouraging like gay people like me, because someone like you speaks out about it, and you're going to be called 1,200 names in the book. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I speak out about it. Yeah, I get called names, but people still take me more serious because I am gay, and I'm like, yo, guys, this is too much.
Yeah.
So my hope is that as long as gay people continue to fight against it, we can kind of bring it back. But it's a wild machine, and I think part of it though is, okay, the media, the news media outlets, we all know that they're controlled by the government. Why is there not a unbiased news media outlet? Like, I think division, I call it purposeful division. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? I think it's all done by design to keep people hating each other and to keep people divided. And so you're essentially fighting against this huge monster. You know, like how does a creator go about bringing division or bringing unity in a world of division when the division's being directly funneled in by our government
Mm-hmm.
on purpose? So, you know,
What's to keep everybody? We all have to live in fear of each other, and fear of. I mean, that's kind of like if that wasn't there, we wouldn't need the media to bark at us and the government. It's like that's what they want to do is keep us divided, and that's kind of part of the
and
overall.
it's working.
Yo, yeah, too well, I think.
It works so well, and no one wants to talk, and like no one wants to bring it together, and it actually like boggles my mind. It starts to frustrate me because I'm like, wait, how how are you not seeing that every problem is multifaceted? It's like, okay, conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
I have this saying that I say, conservatives are the biggest contributing factor to the trans problem. I say this because if you have a boy, and I can do a social experiment on my social media tonight. I can post a video of a little girl who is riding a dirt bike in like male clothing. Okay, everyone's gonna be like, "Wow, that's a badass chick." I know, I experienced it. No one harped on me for being a masculine female. Now you take a little boy. You got a little boy and he's wearing I don't know, he's wearing pink socks, a pink shirt, maybe some jeans, okay, but he's playing with Barbies. There'll be thousands of comments just reaming him, being like, that ain't a man, that ain't a man, that ain't a man, you ain't no little boy, you're ruining that little boy, you're turning that little boy into a girl. And now when that little boy experiences that his whole entire life, he ends up, clicks in his brain, I guess I'm not a boy. If I can't be this way and be a boy, I guess I'm not a boy. He goes out and pursues being a girl. And that is the contribution that conservatives play to this issue. They refuse to recognize it. It's like, I am not trans today because I was allowed to be myself. You cannot deny the fact that there are effeminate males being born. I mean, we already know the stats on hormones in general tanking. Testosterone rates are just tanking in the male species. I don't know, it's probably the processed foods, but shit. What do you do when I had a cousin, and mind you, we all lived on a farm, like hyper conservative masculine people. I got a cousin. He is born. He's like 7 or 8 years old, and he sounds like the most effeminate. He's that kid that you're like, oh, he's gonna grow up gay. He is gonna grow up gay. You just see that. He's reeking with estrogen. And sure enough, he's an adult today, and he's gay. But if he was abused in a way that made him think it's not okay to be an effeminate boy, I guarantee he would have been trans as well.
Yeah. We're jumping to that conclusion, right? If people, as kids, because kids play with all kinds of things, kids grow up and they go through phases. Boys may try on their mom's shoes or walk around their mom's shoes or go through these phases. But if we freak out and say, "Oh my goodness, you must be a girl," or vice versa, yeah, I think
you're planting that. It's indoctrination on both sides.
Yeah, it's exactly, and it's planting those seeds, and it shouldn't be there. You should let kids just kind of develop and figure out for themselves. They don't know at that young age what if a boy or a girl, and it's just I see so much damage out there, from parents that are kind of pushing that agenda onto their children.
Mm-hmm. I had no idea that wearing boy clothes as a girl meant anything. It was like, oh, these are my play clothes. I called them my play clothes, and that was it. Wearing boy clothes never begged anyone to ask me what my gender was. It never begged anyone to ask me, hey, why are you acting like a boy? Like, no one talked about it. I was just allowed to do it, and it didn't make being a female bad for me. It made being a female actually, I'm so secure as a female that I'm like the most positive, happy adult. My childhood did me one hella good. And
Yeah,
it's other thing. I wasn't raised with technology. I wasn't raised with screens. I wasn't
mm,
raised with phones.
that's a
You
big
know, I
thing.
didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't get any access to that until I was like, 17, 18. So,
yeah, that's huge because I feel like there's a lot of hate on the internet and a lot of confusion, especially for young people. If Did you? What kind of reaction are you getting now on social media? Do you get it from both sides? Do you get the gay community get upset with you, or what are you getting?
the gay community is really upset with me. There's like some crazy leftists who are like, they think I'm the scum of the earth, which
Mm.
love y'all for that. And then it's like the conservatives generally accept me when until I start talking about Jesus. Then they get mad, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But if I'm not talking about Jesus, they're cool. When I start talking about Jesus, then they get a little bit too much. But
Hmm.
I'd still I if you had to lock me on an island with a group of conservatives or a group of hyper leftists, I'd take the conservatives any day. Just because I think conservatives have a little bit more grace. They definitely have more grace for me. Versus like leftists will pull up a tweet that you made when you were like 14 years old and try to blast you on the internet for you. It's
Yeah,
like, what are you doing?
yeah,
So my response is generally good from conservatives.
that's good. I mean, it because it I think encourages people to share their ideas and their opinions without getting blasted. I mean, people hide behind keyboards and they type things, and there are real people out there that are putting out this content. So it does hurt. I mean, we're human, so no matter how strong we appear on in social media, I feel like you can't help but get hurt by some of those things. Do you?
Oh no, it don't hurt me.
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with negativity? You just kind of push through.
Yeah, like it don't bother me at all. So like I'm secure in my life, and it's almost like you start elevating to a point where I like genuinely laugh at some of these comments, and it's not like a forced laugh. It's not like I have to laugh through it kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's just humans are interesting, and a lot of them are on the lower IQ scale. I've come to find out, and you just start to take pity on people because my life, I live it. Like I'm enjoying it. I
Yeah.
don't sit there and spend my time. I could not imagine living a life where I even had the time to leave nasty comments on other people's posts.
Right.
Because if you have the time to do that, you're not living it. And I really, like, I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, feel bad for you. It's not like sarcastic. It's not like, oh, it doesn't bother me, but it does. No, like it genuinely doesn't bother me because I feel bad for these people. They're in cages, and I
Hmm.
can't. You're looking at like animals in the zoo. You just kind of feel bad for them.
Yeah. Do you think that's more of being misinformed or not willing to listen to other ideas? What do you?
So I have this interesting belief. It's part of like what I believe the fall of humanity is. Humans have an interesting affliction for hate, and they have an interesting like desire for the negative. It's
Hmm.
very weird. It's the reason why the news channels historically were not always negative. They posted or presented positive and negative news, but through tracking what did well, they found out very quickly that humans in general responded to the negative broadcast in the masses comparatively to the positive ones.
Hmm.
So that's where we're at this state where like these news channels who want to keep their views up just keep fear mongering, fear mongering, fear mongering. And I do think, like, especially if you take an evolutionary approach to that, it makes sense in the human to see the negative and not the positive because that triggers flight or fight response. And that is how we've got here today. So humans just have like this affliction for negativity that a lot of them can't break. So that's what I think the problem is. A lot of people are closed-minded, and I think it's a biological disadvantage.
Hmm. It's like people, especially with news and media, it's like that it somehow feeds this desire they have to hear negative things or to make you mad. It's like
Yeah.
people watch news and it's like, oh, I'm so mad at this going on or that, but you may not have all the information to make an educated opinion on it. You're just hearing these kind of blasts of news that are told from one side, whether you're conservative or liberal. I feel like you're getting spoon-fed one side or the other, and there are two sides to every story. So I guess I feel like as society, we need to learn how to maybe listen more and not speak so much, especially in the art of conversation. Do you feel like that we don't know how to converse anymore as a society without getting upset?
Yeah, I think people take everything personally without realizing the other person's experience. Like every person you talk to has how many experiences, how many hours, how many minutes, how many months, how many days, how many years of life experience of things that they've perceived. So when you're coming up to conversation, you're not just coming up to a conversation with another person. You're coming up to a conversation with a person and everything previously that they've experienced. And I think we forget about that. So when I talk to people, the first rule I take when talking to people, because I do this thing a lot where I just hop on a call with like random, like crazy leftists will be in my comments telling me that I'm the worst thing on the earth, or even some conservatives, blah, blah, blah. And I'll ask them to hop on a call. The first thing I do is I get on a call and I ask them how their day is. And I start to talk about, what's the plans for their week. I don't even talk about the issue first. I go straight into getting to know them, what their hobbies are, what they like, and establishing a laundry list of things that we have in common. I do that first. I get to know their life and figure out who I'm talking to and how I'm going to talk to them. And then we start to go into the issue. And I notice every time I do that, they're coming into it with an open mind. I've took the time to take their closed view and open it. Because it's kind of like when you're pitching a ball. If I pitch a ball into a small hole, it's probably not going to go in. But if I take time to dig out the hole and I got a big one, I'm probably going to make it in there. You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to put in the work for the person that you want to have this conversation with by getting to know them first. People don't do that. They don't take the time to do that. And I don't think they understand basic psychology. It's the same reason why I try to explain to the people who stand in the streets with the "you're going to hell" signs that they're turning people away from God and that it's not helping. If you go stand outside of a pride parade and you start reading scripture at people, it's not, you're literally doing the exact opposite of what you think you're doing. At that point, you're just virtue signaling.
You've lost them automatically. You've lost people if you're judging and like trying to do that right off the bat. Yeah, it's not gonna.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's like every single person that I've ever brought to Christ, I got a house full of people that I've brought to Christ. So what I'm doing with the church type thing, I do that now. I got 3 girls who live with me, and all of their relationships move closer to Christ. I have one girl who she completely was just baffled, thought she was turned her away from Christ because she thought she was going to hell. Like, she was not living her life for Christ. She was not into that at all. Like Christianity was one of those things that was thrown on the back burner, right? And it's because of feeling consistently judged, because she was feeling consistently like she was not allowed to have that. And so I go and I build relationships and I teach through love and through my life what this is actually about. That's how you bring people to Christ. I have never brought anyone to Jesus by yelling scripture at them. I've never brought, the only ever times I've brought someone to God was through months and months of friendship.
Yeah. It's what Jesus did. Yeah.
Exactly. He literally gave us the example. And that's when you start to wonder, like, where humanity's comprehension skills went down the toilet, because he gave us a literal example. His entirety of his life is an example of how to bring people to him. Everyone has done the exact opposite. They open up a building and put a sign out telling you to come every Sunday, except they sing songs and no one's actually doing that much work within their community. Now, you're donating for a select few to do it, but the majority of the congregation are not participants in the good works of faith.
Yeah.
Second of all, then you have people who just think that they see Jesus's life, they ignore it, and they're like, okay, screaming in the streets, that's our tactic. Handing out pamphlets, that's our tactic. Knocking on your door to a random stranger, that's our tactic. And I'm like, does anyone? I've never seen a single church do what Jesus did, take the actual time to build discipleship amongst, I don't know where that got lost in translation, but like when I read the Bible, it's very blatant. So I'm just
Yeah.
not sure what happened there.
What do you have? Do you have people? When you mentioned when you talk about God or talk about Christianity, people come at you. What do they say mainly? Have you had a good debate with anybody, like on a phone call about that?
The only issue is most people who want to debate me, they want to do a phone call. They don't want to record content, and I'm like, okay, it's really not worth my time. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but you just want to yell at me on the phone, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But most people, they tell me this when I talk about Jesus. They tell me this, and it's kind of frustrating. It's like, yo, you can't have Jesus because you're gay. And I look at them and I'm like, who did Jesus come for? Did he come for the sinners? Was Jesus come to save the sinners, right? So for one. For two, I'm going to say right now, out of all 6 passages in the Bible, none of them, not a single one of the 6 passages talk about a God-fearing, same-sex, loving, monogamous relationship. None of them do, but they all talk about, if you, and that's the thing, is people refuse to study history. No one does historical context on these passage verses. It's like when I was raised reading historical context, studying historical context, the history of the Bible, not just passages. And that's on Bible school. That's on literally being raised in a school that taught creationism, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things that when I read like the stories in Sodom and Gomorrah, I see all of the town's men gather under a castle, gather under Lot's tower, asking to rape 2 men. I'm not really sure where that translates into like God-fearing, loving, monogamous, same-sex relationships. And I'm not really sure. And we can continue this on. We see this in Leviticus. We see multiple passages of like where it deals with pederasty, where it deals with back in Bible times, it was very common for apprenticeships to happen where a man would teach a boy how to do something, to do a trade of some sort, because that was college back then. Apprenticeships. The man would take advantage of boy and rape boy. Well, obviously God's going to call that out. Then we have situations in like when we go to Corinth. Okay, for one, Corinth was known, for their temple of Aphrodite. And we know when Paul starts talking about the atrocities happening in the temple and calling them out, we historians pretty much recognize that he's talking about the temple of Aphrodite. And the things that happened in that temple were they were worshiping multitudes of different gods that weren't in the Judaism faith, but rather like, the Greek gods, it's the temple of Aphrodite. You get what I'm saying? And they're all having multiple orgies, female on female, male on male, male on female within this temple, because that is how they served that god. So we just see all these situations, none of which had to do with the same-sex monogamous loving relationship. So I look at that when I establish the reason why I don't think homosexuality in that capacity is a sin, because there are multiple instances in the Bible in which God calls out same-sex relations. When we talk about rape, okay, when we talk about sexual assault, he calls that out multiple times in the Bible. But then why don't straight people see that and say, oh, well, I guess we can't have straight sex, so I guess straight sex is bad. He's not saying that your straight sex is bad. He's saying your straight sex and the capacity of rape and assault is bad. So wouldn't we use the same logic when we're looking at rape and assault in the homosexual capacity in the Bible? Apparently not. And then you also have the argument of procreation. And I'm like, okay, you can make that argument, except 90% of American women use some form of contraceptive. So, and the majority of those, I mean, you got a strong plethora of those are Christian women. I'd say that there's plenty of Christian men out there, a strong majority, who are getting vasectomies, women who are getting their tubes tied. So if you mean to tell me your relationship's morality is based off of your ability to procreate, I'm not sure where you decided that you get to stop your ability to procreate then, or like what? If your argument is procreation, it goes out the window. the minute you put a condom on your wee wee.
Yeah, that's a big problem. It's trying to play God and trying to stop the birth of children. I mean, we see that all the time, whether you're getting vasectomies or using birth control or so. Yeah, I think. Do you feel like that as Christians we can have? How do you feel about that? Are we able to come together in that, whether we have different opinion or not? Because none of us are going to know until Judgment Day at the end anyway. So how do we get along, I guess, as Christians? How do we live amongst one another with
Love.
different opinions? Love.
The answer to absolutely everything in this world is love, and I think people forget that, and it's crazy because I'm some of these conservatives can be frustrating because I will literally make a comment, like I'll make a post and I'll say Jesus is love and grace, like Jesus is love and grace. I'll just say that. That's it. That was the post. That was a comment. And you'll have a bunch of them underneath. Jesus wasn't just love and grace. That's the wrong depiction of Jesus, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just looking at him. I'm like, you mean to tell me the statement I made was wrong? To say that Jesus is love and grace is wrong? Is that actually what you're telling me right now? What are you smoking?
They're going to come after you even for that. Yeah.
You mean to tell me the man who died on the mother freaking cross for everyone's sins, love and grace, he's not that, so it's just they're looking for a reason to fight, so I just don't engage. I'm just like, I'm praying for you, it's okay, honey.
Yeah, I mean, is that super annoying to you that you're just trying to make a statement as a Christian and you get blown up over everything that you put out?
By Christians?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like
I don't associate with them. That's why I call myself a disciple of Christ, because I believe the majority of Christians out here are Pharisees. I call them modern day Pharisees. They're like the exact same people that killed Jesus. You know what I mean? Like the religious right, or the religious they're the ones who go around saying that they know it all. They're the religious I don't even want to call them scholars of the time, but they believe that they have it completely right. And Jesus comes along and is like, you know what? I'm going to do acts of service, help people on a Sunday. And they come and say, this is against the law. And Jesus is like, bro, what? You know what I mean? So we have multiple instances of Jesus breaking what these religious right people thought was against God's law. I mean, like, that's why I think a lot of the people of Israel still reject Jesus as the Messiah, which is like, whatever. I think for me personally, think of it this way. A lot of people say, what do you think about this? They say, to get into heaven, you have to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Mm-hmm. I say it doesn't matter if those words come out of your mouth or not. If you live your life in the truth of unconditional love, if you sit there and put yourself below others and serve God, or serve others as God would want you to, you have Jesus. Whether you have said, I have Jesus or not, you have Jesus. Because I look at it this way. You can say whatever the frick you want to. Your actions is what speaks, not what comes out of your mouth. To accept Jesus, is that to say, I accept Jesus, or is that to live like Jesus? Because imagine if you were beheading someone right now and just saying the words, I accept Jesus Christ. Do you think that's what saves you? You think you're saved, or like what? I'm not sure.
Goes against everything that Jesus taught. Yeah, if you're living a lifestyle of going against what he taught, and which is, like you said, doing works, helping people, love, that all plays into it. It's more than our words. It's how we act and how we treat each other.
Yeah, it's like, I'd say 100% not even our words. Like, it's our actions, words that we speak unto others for sure. But saying the word, the thing is, saying the word, I accept Jesus. The word Jesus wasn't even in the Bible. Like, guys, it's just too much. Like,
yeah.
And I've had conservatives literally tell me that you have to, if you speak that phrase out of your mouth, you're saved. And I'm just like, and they take the acts of service, faith without works is dead verse, they throw it away. They say, oh, not for me. So it's interesting because, like, I do believe that in acts of service is a huge part of being a good disciple. If we look at the lives of Jesus, the life of the disciples, We see plethoras of acts of good service. So to write that off from yourself is not your responsibility. I think it's just negligence in the finest degree.
Yeah, I mean it's practicing our faith. You know, you're out there in the world, you're being an example to other people and showing them what it's all about and why you're, you know, somebody may ask you, why are you doing this? You know, and it's how you kind of evangelize. You're showing people, instead of standing,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, on the street corner, you're actually
Feed
doing
them.
good works. Yeah. Yeah. And
Show
does
them
it
love.
exactly? And that seems to be your overall mantra is love. I mean, it feels like, as I've heard something recently where you said if they're negative comments, to go on there, kill them with kindness. Just
Yeah.
say a nice comment after somebody just kind of rakes you over the coals. I found that was really interesting and a good way to handle it.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful because it also shocks people. The thing is, everyone has gone to the point that they know that they're only making negative comments at this point because they want to argue. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're that bored, they're that angry inside. Their heart is blackened, and I'm like, no, like you guys are my brothers and sisters. You guys are literally my family in God. Like I love all of you guys, and this is gross, and you guys are acting pretty gross right now. So what we're gonna do is if someone makes a comment, there's a couple ways to combat hate. You know, it's like if someone walks up to me and they say something along the lines of like, you know, um, you're a stupid whatever. If you look at them and you're like, hey, what did you say? It just shocks them out of their seat because they don't want to say that again because they
Mm-hmm.
look stupid doing that. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
or I could approach it and be like, what did you fucking say? And you get all, and that's not going to get me anywhere. You know
No,
what I
they
mean? If you
won't.
if you genuinely want to shut it down,
Yeah,
and that's my goal is to genuinely shut it down. The fire can only be doused out with love.
yeah,
That's it.
that's true. It's so true. I mean, I think that's what they want is you to get upset because that's they're trying to get a rile out of you. That's for sure. Do you feel like gay rights, the fight for gay rights, has kind of been morphed or hijacked into other agendas out there? Do you feel like years ago that was a legitimate fight for gay rights, and now it's kind of, I don't know, been watered down a little bit from other things that are being piled on top of it? I mean, I've heard you mention about women's rights. It's almost like it's it's a weird dynamic there. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's like that pendulum swinging thing. It's like you got these random people who like to hijack these movements. It wouldn't be an issue if government, like crazy government officials, did not affirm this shit. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So you got a bunch of people who hijack these movements because like the gay rights movement, it's dead. There's no more. I'm not really sure what rights I like. If you told me that I don't have rights, I would look at you and I'd be like, or if I don't have the same rights as anyone else, I'm just not seeing that. I've worked for myself for the past, I don't know, since I was 22 years old. I'm 26 now. Yeah. I've made it really well for myself. I'm not really sure what rights I don't have. So when you see these people, you kind of start to see a different agenda place itself there because the
Hmm.
agenda was for gay people to get married, for gay people to be able to like hold hands in public without being shamed, you know, like just these basic things.
Yeah.
And now it's been warped into literally indoctrinating children. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but what in the world? This is giving depopulation, big pharma forever vibes. You know what I mean? Like this, you start to wonder at what point is this the further incapacitation of the Americans, just the American population, in order to keep them at cash cow status.
Yeah. Keep us where they want us. Keep us kind of
No, yeah, and
in
I
check.
think it's done purpose. Yeah, I think it's done purposeful. And sometimes I wonder. I hear people talk about like transhumanism, like this is the beginning of, you know, and I wouldn't even say it's the beginning. I'd say the beginning, what I believe personally started as. Everyone is like, oh my gosh, transing the kids, but no one wants to talk about for some reason. We thought it was okay. I'll go on two topics. Plastic surgery. I don't think Botox is okay. I don't think plastic surgery. I don't think changing your physical appearance just because you want to is okay. Now, if a girl gets a breast reduction because her back is freaking going out, that's
Mm-hmm.
different. That's a medical necessity. But just the sheer, I don't like me, I'm changing me, that started it. The plastic surgery people, they're the ones who freaking started it. And again, something that straight people don't want to talk about, but they normalized that. They normalized the changing your body because you don't like it.
Yeah.
Ginormous breast, over sexualization of the female body. Then we look at the other thing with kids. Yeah, kids should never be put on life-altering medications. Children should never be put on puberty blockers, hormones. You know what else children should never have been put on? The mass amount of children that we put on Adderall because we decided that a child could not sit still in a classroom for 8 hours a day because, I don't know, it's against children's biology. Why do you think children are hyperactive? Children are hyperactive because they had to biologically keep up with adult humans when ancient times existed. Okay, a child had to have the stamina to be able to run away from predators, to be able to keep up with villages. So you have these hyperactive children. Children have the energy of gods. I mean, like, they're endlessly energetic because it's ingrained in their biology. So when you shove them in a classroom and they're malfunctioning as a result, and your idea is to medicate them on Adderall, a synthetic meth, that was the big solution. Now all these kids are growing up with mass problems, and we're like, oh, what's going on? Oh, then trans the children. Well, it started a long time ago, and no one wants to talk about it. But it's like, I got a brother. He's a stepbrother, so he wasn't raised on the farm. He wasn't raised within my family. Happened to him, 7 years old, put on Adderall. He's screwed up as an adult. You could see the regression, and he knows. He's like, they did this to me. Like, they put me on Adderall, and I'm like, I can't even function half the time. He's got so many different side effects of a lifelong of taking Adderall since a kid. No one's talking about it, and it's something that I'm going to start talking about on social media because it's frustrating. The medicating children, for being kids is. So you start to see this progression agenda. We normalize that. No one's talking about it. Now it's the transing of kids. No one's going to, or I guess people are talking about, but eventually it'll push and it'll be something else. We just continue going after kids, and we continue going after people. Right now it's under the guise of LGBTQ, but it's been here for quite some time.
Yeah, we just, with the Adderall thing, I feel like years ago, I don't feel like, of course, it wasn't around, I guess, but teachers didn't go right for that. I mean, teachers, I'm not trying to slam teachers at all. Teachers are great, but and in parenting too, it didn't go for that right away. There were other ways to nurture a child. Like, if they're really hyperactive, maybe they need to stand up in class and not sit down at a desk. Maybe they need to be free to, you know what I mean? It's like I think we reach too quickly for a medical solution or to diagnose somebody right off the bat. I feel like that's just also been overhyped, I guess, especially in kids. We're really doing a lot of damage to kids, in my opinion, these days.
Yeah, the only reason I'm a normal functioning adult is because I didn't have to sit in a classroom 8 hours a day. Most of my schooling was done outside.
Yeah.
It's like PE was farm work. You know what I mean? Because this is a really small school. I was never isolated or confined into anything. And the thing is, I don't care. Granted, I think disciplinary actions for sure is why, say, like, maybe the kids of the past, you know, the switch did keep people under control for sure. And now we've gotten rid of that, and you got children running rampant. But for me, even the switch, even the whack into submission for that kind of environment, I don't agree with it. Just because, like, so I'm a type of person, I bring everything down to biology and what. When you look at, like, a human, what they were evolved to do, if you believe in evolution versus creationism, but if you look at what the human body is meant to do or why it does the certain things it does, that's where I place how someone should create their environment. Say, like, for me, I eat all organic foods. I don't eat processed foods. I'm very against processed foods because I know that my body has not evolved to eat processed foods. A child, the school system nowadays, my school, how I was raised growing up, that was great for my biology. Any capacity of shoving children into a classroom, into a dark room, and taking sunlight away and playtime away and that kind of stuff, I think it's... The school system we have now was invented in the Industrial Revolution age purposely to create workers. No. We know what we're doing, and it's done on purpose, and it begs the question, like, what do you do about it? We need workers, for sure. But at what point are we also damaging kids and their creativity and why is I've never used anything from school except my writing, my
Yeah.
spelling, you know what I mean? But even when it comes down to I graduate, I didn't really graduate. I don't have a degree of anything, college or high school. I've never used anything. And
Yeah.
I make more money than most people my age. I make more money than most people twice my age. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not really sure and I attribute it to how I was raised because I was
Yeah.
really able to be creative.
I think that's huge. I mean, being creative, being able to think for yourself, critical thinking. We're not just in a cookie press, just being pressed out. Everybody's going to be the same. I mean, we have to have that ability to kind of figure out what we want to do. And a lot of kids today will end up coming out of college and they'll be lost and not know where they want to go, what they want to do. And it's sad because they're in this world of, okay, what do I want to do? I've got this degree. Now, what am I going to do with it?
Hmm.
So, but you're always what I love about you too is you're always up, you're always positive. What would you tell somebody? How do you do that? And what would you tell someone who's really struggling and trying to make it through the day, no matter what's going on in their life? What's the key to happiness there, or to just being content every day and not worrying about so much?
Man, oh, that's such a good one. I think for me the key, and it's pretty long. I think the key, there's a couple different keys in this, and one of them is to genuinely, the first step I would ask anyone to go down is the route of gratitude, the road of gratitude, and really grasping what it means to be grateful and to actually allow your physiology to change around that emotion of gratitude. Because I think people forget, like I just got back from a fishing vacation. I hear a lot of people get back from a vacation and they're not excited to go back into their daily lives. I was just enamored when I got home. I was like, oh my gosh, my bed, all my things. I got up this morning. I got to go to the gym. I'm like, to me, I feel like I'm living in a resort, the kind of life I get to go in a car. I got to go work out. I got a pool, at the apartment that I can swim at. Like, you just start to practice that gratitude where you're really happy and you're always looking at the positives of things. That leads me into the second, always looking at the positives of I literally don't know a single situation. My dad died when I was like 16. All I take away from the experience is positives. I don't
Hmm.
dwell on it. It's not something that I sit there and beat myself up for. I The thing is, my dad died when I was 16 and I went down a really bad path. And there was a couple years there where I was doing a lot of things I shouldn't, and I should have been put in jail. And, like between different substance abuse problems, it's like I haven't always been like this. I fought my way to be here and to take my groundings and put myself back together. But it's like gratitude, that's a big one. Looking for the positives, that's a huge one. I think the other one is understanding that love is the real answer. If you take the negatives in your life or negative people in your life and you start to like kind of either remove them or try to transform them through love, it it just changes your person. Really looking at things through the lens of love. I'll go to the grocery store. I purposely, throughout my entire life, no matter where I go, I look as to how I can help someone. Anytime someone drops something in the grocery store, I'm picking it up. Anytime I'm in a public space, I'm opening doors for people. I've been in an ER and I'm purposely standing to make sure that people who aren't as able-bodied as me have a space to sit.
Hmm.
I've helped people pull their wives out of their vans and put them into wheelchairs, old men who can't carry their wife out of the vehicle, just because I see it. You don't need to tell me to do it. I'm just going to go do it. And that really, I think, brings a peace to a person, knowing that you're there to help. The other thing, and I think this one's a little bit dramatic, is I'm not scared to die. I have no fear of death. And I think once you're not scared to die, you get a lot of peace. Now, whether you believe in an afterlife, whether you believe in reincarnation, there's one true, simple, I think, fact, and it comes from Mark Twain. I've exist pretty much my whole entirety in something of death, okay? Like, how can I fear the only thing I've ever known? So before I was ever born, in the entirety of the world, Did I exist or not? I was not here. I did not exist. So if I go into a place of non-existence and it's never bothered me previously, how could it bother me? So whether you're religious or not, I don't think death you should fear, because you've spent the majority of your existence in death. If you refuse to believe in an afterlife, if you refuse to believe in whether you got reincarnation on your plate, whether you got heaven on your plate, I don't care. I think really believing in something or having peace with death, I think that one also helps a lot.
Wow, that's huge. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Mercedes. It's a great conversation. I really thank you for coming on. It's been great to meet you and talk to you. It's really been nice. Thank you.
Oh, of course. Your pleasure.
Happiness Sold Separately is created and hosted by Jason Hensley and is produced by Makash Films. Music by Soundstripe. Narration by Lauren Gobis. If you or someone you know is in crisis and needs immediate help, call the National Mental Health Hotline at 866-903-3787. We would be honored if you would rate, share, and subscribe. From the entire Happiness Sold Separately team, thank you for listening.